My name is Claire Whitfield, and I want to start by telling you who I actually was before this story became about revenge. By 32, I owned my condo outright. Not helped by family outright, I mean. I'd built a financial planning consultancy from nothing, worked 80-hour weeks for 6 straight years, and paid it off myself while my mother introduced me at parties as the one who does something with spreadsheets. Meanwhile, my sister Vanessa, 3 years younger, was the golden one. Softer, prettier by our mother's standards, easier to show off. But here's what nobody talked about at those parties. When our father's small business nearly collapsed 4 years ago, it was me who quietly wired the money that kept the lights on. When Vanessa lost her job and couldn't make rent for 3 months, it was my guest room she slept in. No questions asked. And when she got engaged to Bradley Ashford III, son of old Charleston money, it was me who helped her put down the deposit on the venue. Because Vanessa's savings account, despite the Ashford name floating around her, was still recovering. I did all of this quietly, not for credit. I did it because she was my sister, and because somewhere underneath my mother's constant comparisons, I still believed family meant something. So when my mother called me 5 days before the wedding I had helped make possible and told me I wasn't invited, I want you to understand exactly how much that betrayal actually weighed. "Claire, sweetheart," she said, her voice doing that bright, brittle thing it does when she's about to say something cruel and dress it up as practical. "We just think it's best if you sit this one out. The Ashfords are very particular about their guest list. You understand?" I didn't understand. Not yet. She didn't give me a reason, just something vague about keeping things simple and not overcomplicating an already stressful week. I sat on my kitchen floor after that call for a long time, not crying, just doing the math on 32 years of being someone's afterthought. And on one very specific check, I'd written 8 months earlier that had made this entire wedding possible in the first place. For 2 days, I told myself my mother's excuse, keeping things simple, guest list logistics. I even tried to believe it, because the alternative that there was a real reason, and it was about me specifically, hurt more. Then Priya, my best friend, called me with something she'd heard from Vanessa's cousin Mallory, who has never once in her life kept a secret. At a dinner the week before, my mother had been showing the Ashfords photos from a cousin's wedding on our side of the family, big, loud, wonderfully normal, the kind with a chocolate fountain and a DJ who takes requests. In one photo, I was mid-laugh, holding a plastic cup of beer, wearing a dress that cost $40 instead of $400. Mrs. Ashford had made one small comment, something like, "Oh, is that the sister who works for the nonprofit?" Not cruel exactly, just observational, just enough. And my mother, terrified that one more observation like it might land during the actual ceremony, in front of people whose approval she'd spent a year chasing, decided the cleanest solution was to remove the variable entirely. Remove the variable. That was me. The daughter who'd wired money to save our father's business. The daughter whose guest room had kept Vanessa off her friends' couches. The daughter who'd helped write the deposit check for a venue I would now never see from the inside. I didn't cry when Priya told me. I laughed a short, disbelieving laugh because it was so small, so embarrassingly petty, and it explained my mother in one clean stroke. But underneath that laugh, something in me went very quiet and very clear. Here's the thing about being the daughter. Nobody fully trusted with the family image. People stop performing for you. They think you're outside the circle, so they get careless. And you see things. 6 months before that phone call, at a family barbecue, I'd stepped onto the back porch to take a work call and overheard Bradley on the phone, clearly certain no one was listening. "I only caught a fragment. I miss you too. Just give me a few more months." In a tone he had never once used with my sister in my presence. I told myself it was probably nothing. A cousin, an old friend. I filed it away and didn't think about it again. Until 5 days before the wedding, when my mother handed me a reason to think about it very hard. I found the woman's name through nothing more sophisticated than patience. Cross-referencing tagged photos on Bradley's public accounts until one name kept resurfacing in comments and old posts. Sophie Renner. I sent her a message that I rewrote 4 times before sending. "Hi, I think we might need to talk. This isn't a prank, and I'm not trying to cause you trouble. I just need to know something. She responded in under 20 minutes. And what she told me over the next 2 days made my stomach turn in a way I hadn't expected. Sophie had no idea Bradley was engaged. None, as far as she knew. They'd been together quietly for over a year. 3 months ago, Bradley had flown to Chicago for what he told Vanessa was a work conference and spent the whole trip in a hotel with Sophie. Sophie sent me the receipt. She sent me months of messages, and then she sent me something that made the whole thing collapse into something much worse than an affair. She sent me a screenshot of a text Bradley had sent her. I love you. You know that's real. This wedding thing is just optics for my parents. I told you that. And underneath it, almost as an afterthought, she added, he used to send me lines that sounded so familiar. I actually looked them up once because they felt scripted. Turns out he'd used almost the exact same words with me that showed up, word for word, in a photo caption your sister posted last year. He was recycling the same script on both of us. I sat with that for a long time. This wasn't a man who'd made one mistake. This was a man rehearsing intimacy like a line he delivered to whoever was in front of him. If I hadn't been family enough to sit in the audience, I decided I wasn't going to keep being family enough to protect the show. I didn't send anything to my mother first. My mother would have found a way to bury it, smooth it over, protect the Ashford name because by then, it had practically become her own. I went straight to Vanessa the night before the wedding. She almost didn't pick up. Things had been strained between us too. Collateral damage from our mother's decision. But she answered, Van, I need to tell you something. And I need you to know I'm not saying this to hurt you, I said. I've been sitting on part of this for 6 months because I told myself it wasn't my place. I was wrong. I can't let you walk into tomorrow without knowing. I told her everything, the porch conversation, Sophie, the Chicago trip, the recycled messages. I sent her the screenshots and stayed on the line while she read them in silence. I heard her breathing change. I heard the exact moment her whole future rearranged itself. Then I heard something I hadn't expected. Her voice, steady, sharper than I'd ever heard it. Say his name again, she said quietly. Bradley Ashford III. Funny. He introduces himself with the number like it makes him more real. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. The way I do. The next morning, she confronted him directly. Before the ceremony, in the small dressing room behind the garden, where 200 guests were already arriving. Mallory, who was doing her makeup, heard the entire thing and repeated it to half the family within the hour. Vanessa, I can explain, Bradley reportedly said, the second she showed him the screenshots. No, Vanessa said. You already explained everything. You just didn't know I was listening. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She simply put the phone down, looked at her own reflection in the mirror for a long moment, and said, Get out. I need 5 minutes before I decide what I'm walking into. I wasn't there. I'd been uninvited, and I kept my word about that. No dramatic entrance. No back row crash. What I'm about to tell you, I've pieced together from Priya's cousin who did the flowers, from Mallory, and from my father, who finally told me the truth weeks later. Vanessa didn't cancel the wedding before it started. She let it begin. She let 200 guests in, linen and pastel sit down in white folding chairs in a garden that had cost more than most people's yearly salary, a garden I had personally helped pay for. She let the string quartet play. She let Bradley stand at the altar, visibly nervous in a way people assumed was just wedding day jitters. Then the doors opened, and she walked down the aisle. She got halfway far enough that every single guest could see her, could see the dress, could see her face, and stopped. I'm not going to do this, she said, loud enough to carry to the back row. Yesterday I found out that Bradley has been in a relationship with a woman named Sophie for over a year. I have the messages. I have the hotel receipt from the trip he told me was a work conference. And I found out he's been saying the exact same things to both of us, like we're interchangeable. Guests gasped. Someone actually dropped a champagne flute. Bradley's face, according to 3 separate witnesses, went the color of the tablecloths. He started toward her, hands out, saying her name. Vanessa, please. Let me explain. This isn't. You already explained everything, she said again, calmly, for the whole garden to hear. You just didn't know I was listening. And then, because apparently the universe wanted this story to have a proper climax, a woman none of the Ashford side recognized walked up from the parking area toward the edge of the garden. Sophie. She hadn't planned to come. She told me later she'd driven 2 hours in a panic after realizing what date the wedding was, needing to see for herself whether the man who'd told her the engagement was just optics was actually about to marry someone in front of her. She didn't storm the aisle. She didn't need to. She just stood at the edge of the garden, visibly shaking. And the moment enough guests recognized her from Bradley's own social media, the whispering did the rest. Bradley's mother turned, wild-eyed, looking for someone to blame that wasn't her son, and landed predictably on my mother. Diane, did you know about this? She demanded. Is this some kind of scheme from your side of the family? My mother, by every account, looked like she'd been slapped, because in a way, she had. All that careful architecture, the blazer with brass buttons, the vineyard weekends, the year of pretending our family belonged in this garden, collapsed in about 90 seconds, in front of exactly the people she'd spent a year performing for. Vanessa reached up, unhooked her engagement ring, and set it down on the small table beside the altar, next to the unity candle no one would be lighting. This wedding is over, she said, but it isn't cancelled because of anything my family did. It's over because of what he did. Then she picked up her dress and walked back up the aisle, past 200 stunned faces, and got into the car that was supposed to take her and Bradley to the reception. She drove herself. My mother called me that night, not to apologize, to demand answers. Did you put Vanessa up to this? She asked, her voice tight with something between fury and panic. Claire, tell me the truth. Did you plan this to embarrass me? No, I said, and it was true. I told Vanessa what I knew. What she did with it was her choice. That's the difference between us, Mom. I don't manage people. I respect them enough to let them choose. There was a long silence. You could have told me first, she said. You could have let me come to my own sister's wedding, I said. The wedding I helped pay the deposit on, by the way. We all make choices about who we protect. You chose the Ashfords over me. I chose the truth over your comfort. Another silence. Longer this time. Everyone's talking about us, she said finally, and I could hear it then, not shame at what had happened to Vanessa, but the specific panic of a woman who had just watched her carefully built reputation evaporate in front of the only people whose opinion she'd ever chased. I know, I said. That's not really my problem to fix, Mom. I hung up before she could answer. It's been 4 months now. Vanessa and I are closer than we've been in years, the kind of close that only comes from someone choosing honesty over comfort at exactly the moment it mattered most. She stayed with me for 2 months after the wedding, in what used to be my home office, and some nights we still sit on my kitchen floor, the same floor where I got the call that started all of this, and she tells me she's grateful. Not just that I told her, but that I was the kind of person who could actually afford to lose the family's approval in order to tell her. You didn't need them, she said to me once. That's why you could do it. I think that's the only reason anyone ever told me the truth in that family. The Ashfords predictably distanced themselves from my mother almost immediately. No more vineyard invitations. No more calls about summering together. The relationship my mother had spent a year building, sacrificing her own daughter to protect, evaporated the moment it stopped being useful to them. Old money, it turns out, doesn't stay loyal to new embarrassment. My mother finally understood what she'd actually traded. Not right away, it took weeks of silence from the Ashford side. Weeks of her old friends asking careful, pitying questions before it landed. She showed up at my condo on a Sunday, sat at my kitchen table, and, in the smallest voice I've ever heard from her, asked if we could talk. I let her talk. I let her apologize. In the halting way people apologize when they're more sorry about the consequences than the act itself. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I just wanted things to look right, she said. For once. Mom, I said, I didn't destroy your perfect picture. I just stopped pretending it was real. She didn't have anything to say to that. Neither did I really. We just sat there, in my condo paid for with my own money, built by my own hands, the home she'd never once complimented, and let the silence be honest. For the first time in longer than either of us could remember, I'm not fully healed from any of it. Some things need time to be true, not just said. But I know this much. I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. I was the reason she didn't marry the wrong man. And I did it without needing my mother's approval, her guest list, or her permission to exist in the family photograph. That, it turns out, was the whole point.